The Flyin Lion says,
boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
Just give me a reason to drink some Guinness in the morning.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's definitely tougher to be an academy player than it is a pro.
Soccer's my favorite sport now.
The jersey swap was
my car of the week, trivia question of the week. Welcome back to the Flyin Lion podcast, another off-season edition of the Flyin Lion. We've had some interesting FC Cincinnati news since the last time you guys had tuned in. This is our first episode of 2025, and we are pumped for a Supporters Shield run and many trophies in 2025. Excited to talk some FCC tonight. Sam, how we doing?
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of rumors, a lot of things swirling, media days, call-ups, ex-players being signed. So we got a lot to talk about. We've kind of, as we said in the last podcast, kind of holding on to some information, right, as far as when we want to have a podcast, and felt like we had enough info to actually, have a decent one for you guys, and hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I was hoping that we would get more inbound news. Like, a lot of the info that we've had is like the outgoing part of things, but that's a needed part of what we need with this roster. So we'll kind of do a deep dive on that, like Sam said, potential signings and what we had heard today. And then we did have media day. First thing first, though, the roster updates. So a couple things that are fun in the offseason, Sam. We always say it's kind of like our silly season. But you see Yamil Assad on Instagram posts about a club down in Ecuador. So this club is Club Deportivo El Nacional. Pretty big club actually down in Ecuador. I first thought, hey, is he down there training? Like, why is this guy posting about it? I had to do a real big deep dive because there was no context to it, just out of the blue. They just had started their training and they posted about it. I'm thinking, man, this guy's down in Ecuador. We're losing him. It's kind of going against what Pat Noonan had said, or Chris Albright even, in their conference, saying like, hey, we want to get this guy back. But the deep dive shows that his father is actually the coach of the team. So maybe he's just being supportive of the father's team.
Yeah, just a little too quick there. Obviously,
get excited when I see this.
Yeah, I know. We're always like looking at stuff, Instagram stories, like Twitter, like everything to try and, grab a source of something. And, thank God it's nothing, right? Like you said,
right.
It's just his dad coaching for the club, just him kind of going and, supporting his dad, being in training, maybe giving, some advice to, some of the young players there or something like that. But, yeah, just seemed like more of a business trip, if you will, for him.
Yeah. And we'll honestly, see what happens. Just another photo, I think a day or two later, and he's down in Argentina. So him and Lucho have been hanging out. They've been playing down there. Can you imagine just doing a pickup game with some of those guys? I mean, I'm sure the streets of Argentina are just littered with talent. That would be kind of a really fun thing to do in the off season, though, is just hey, let's go down to one of these countries or even these cities and just go play some pickup soccer, and you might run into a pro down there.
Oh yeah, I bet easily. Whether or not they're in season down there, right, or not, I think likely you'll find somebody on a playing field there.
Yeah. And I mean, to go back to the Assad part of things, like I was definitely like zooming in on the photos, trying to see, was he in any of the training things? I didn't see him in any of the posts. So hopefully that, again, is just him being supportive of others' team. But the next thing we're going to move into, really one of two big pieces that really need to happen quickly, in our opinion. But Alvaro Barreal, is he staying or going, Sam? I had posted about him as FC Cincinnati Supporter Shield champion ring. It sounded like maybe the shipping didn't work out during last season while he was down there, and you're an active player of the team right now. Let's send it down to you in Argentina. But it was kind of cool to see him posting about it. It did bring back a lot of the memories, of him on that team, and did kind of give me a twinge of like, maybe, could this happen? I don't know if this is going to happen. But yeah, all things point to, again, probably him leaving more than anything. The injury situation coming off his surgery, does that, lower his value right now? Does it mean maybe a summer move? It's interesting, his contract runs through the end of this year. If you loan this guy and there's a buy option at the end, like, we don't technically, own his rights at that point. So how is this buy thing going to work out if he's not even an active player with us at that point? I don't know. Maybe there's a secret agreement with him and the club about another year. It's just odd. I don't want it to become a constant. He's back, he's loaned. He's back, he's loaned.
Yeah.
Like that's what Miazga did in Chelsea.
Yeah, I know. And for Barreal, obviously, like him with FC Cincinnati, all-star, right? Like he had, in his eyes, reached the potential, or at least grown out of the MLS, right? And we really thought the next step for him could be something big, something huge, and he's kind of been stunted a little bit. And like you said, if he continues to be this player that's just loaned out, comes back, loaned out, come back, like I can't imagine like what that's going to do for his confidence and for the rest of his career. Hopefully, like you said, he's able to find a home, whether it be with FC Cincinnati or with an Argentinian club, Brazil, wherever he wants to be. But yeah, I think these recent rumors with Santos, obviously, it looks like it's going to be right exactly what you said. Another loan with a buy option, similar to Cruzeiro. I know there's a couple other clubs that were being mentioned, but this one seems to be having the most steam, really, and could be done probably in the next couple weeks if we had to give it a length, probably. But
Who knows,
I mean,
man?
just based off of the
Honestly, who
rumors they're
knows?
swirling right now, right? So you would think that if they're pretty advanced, it would just kind of be on FC Cincinnati's end, right? I think that's been the bulk of all the rumors is FC Cincinnati just trying to really figure out their contract situation, roster situation, what's best moving forward for everybody.
Well, and if the player wants to go, then he's got to go. We need to open the spot up now. So that needs to happen. To be bringing in the left wing back. Sounds like again we're going to move likely Orishano more. So you got to fill that role. I'm sure they have many of options that they've been looking at to see, hey, is this a realistic person? Come fill it. We're not hearing those names obviously now, and we're only hearing more of the Barreal out part, but I hope it's not just, agent steam out there. Again, it's season, so who knows what to believe. But yeah, the one that you referenced earlier was a team in Liga MX, which would be maybe a higher dollar amount at that point, which we saw with Vasquez last year isn't a bad thing. Like we can reap the benefits of some of that. So it's like, obviously we want what's best for the player. I honestly thought him going to Cruzeiro, the next move from that he'd be looking for is a European move. Is it more of a stability option if there is like a, less than 5% chance of him coming back, for stability here? Like you mentioned, he was an all-star. He was the best 11 left wing back. So who knows? Hopefully we get some answers soon. The second, Lucho Costa, the situation that changes every day. It's becoming, I hate to say it, but like it was like Brenner-esque. It maybe was like Barreal-esque from last year. Like what's going to happen with Barreal? Okay, is he going to report to, training camp? He did. Did he go down to Clearwater? Yeah, he was there for like a hot second, and then he was loaned out. So is he going to report to camp next week? And we know with Barreal, maybe that said something, him not doing his press conference, that said something. So who knows? There's a ton of smoke out there, all over South America. From all that it seems like, the player Lucho, he wants to go to Boca is obviously his dream. That's been his dream. But you had tweeted out, Alan Velasco of FC Dallas gets a $10 million bid from Boca. You have some huge names being rumored with them. Ander Herrera, another Argentinian player, I believe, as well, that had been connected with. So tons of big name players to Boca Juniors. Is a massive club, but where does Lucho fall into that? Like we know his side, but what do they realistically see is the question.
Yeah, and those two guys are midfielders, right? So obviously they would are taking priority over, if they are or were looking at Lucho at all. And so Ander Herrera, I believe, played at PSG for a while, I think, and some other big clubs in Europe. So Velasco obviously wanting a big move. This would be a semi-big move for him until maybe he goes to Europe or something like that afterwards. But yeah, as far as the other rumors,
can I pause you on that thought? So if you think about this, like we're going to talk about, there's a lot of talk on Lucho's value. You talk about Alan Velasco, and it's shocking to me that he had a $10 million potential move or bid to Boca. If you think about it, this guy came off of an ACL. He played, I think, in only a few games at the end of the MLS season this year. What has he shown past this injury that he's worth 10 million? He's young, he's got the potential, but that's a big investment for them. And I was reading some reports. I mean, that's a big move from Boca too. Like I know historically they're a big club, but they don't make massive dollar amount, moves like this. So a player coming off an ACL, maybe he's in good health. He hasn't played a ton of minutes. Like that's kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, I think so as well, especially, when we're going to talk about, more of Lucho's situation and where, his, evaluation is right now. I mean, if we want to jump into it, we had, some rumors, coming out the past couple of days that there was an agreement since December between Lucho's camp and Corinthians since December. And I guess Corinthians or Lucho's camp have yet to kind of reach an agreement or hear anything from FCC's camp, as well as Atletico Mineiro has sent an offer about $3 to $4 million is the rumor to FC Cincinnati, which immediately, Ryan, we thought was an extreme low ball. But I mean, who are we to say that the 2023 MLS MVP deserves more than $3 to $4 million? Obviously, it fills GAM, right? We get that, but my gosh, like I know maybe let's call it maybe like 6 to 8 mil would be in our eyes would be better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're biased and we love Lucho, and I think his value should be to the moon. Um, the report came from Michael Rincon. I want to give him, props for coming out with this because it seems like a legit source on this rumor. But yeah, I mean, I felt like in a way it's a low ball. All the reports and what everyone's saying is like, look, like it's going to be hard to get anything more for him. We just, again, our side of it is like, we want more for this player and his value. But realistically, what we're looking at is probably, like Sam said, is it a 3? Is it a 4? Is it a 5? Who knows? Again, like
Yeah.
FC is trying to find the best situation. Is it going to be a loan? There was some rumors, is this going to be a loan move with an option to buy? It's one of those things. It's silly season. But yeah, Boca had not sent any concrete offer at the point of what this gentleman was reporting. So it's fascinating to me how much interest a former player, has in the club and bringing them back. But all of the, reports, I guess, are coming more from Brazil.
Yeah.
And that connection with the MLS has become huge. That connection with FC Cincinnati has become huge. We've seen it since, Brenner. I feel like Brenner was the tipping point of the relations between Brazil and the MLS. And from there, we've seen so much back and forth. So we'll see what happens. We'll talk a little bit later what Pat Noonan had to say about this, which was very fascinating. I can see his angle of things, but yeah, we'll see what happens, how we're going to leave it right now. Who knows? Maybe it's happening right now. But other potential signings, Sam, we had heard a report today about a player, a young center back, Malcolm Yang, who was a Swedish youth center back. He's going to potentially, at the time, going to be a U22 initiative player. He did end up signing with Reims of Ligue 1 in France. I reported back in August, we had at least seen a rumor that we were linked with this guy. This was around the time that we were looking for a striker. We were also looking for reinforcements in the back line. One thing we've learned from this front office, Sam, is like we have our targets and we latch onto them and we try to pursue them. And from all it sounds like this player had come to visit Cincinnati recently. And who knows what happened with that, but you get an offer from Ligue 1 in France. My question is, at least with the way that it shakes out right now, Sam, think about our center back lineup. This guy's probably not a starter. Is he going to this French team and saying, am I going to get more minutes with you? And in the same token, I'm going to be playing the PSGs. I'm going to be playing the AC Monaco. I'm going to have better competition in that sense in day-to-day fighting. But if you look at our center back room, it wouldn't have been bad for him to learn under, Miazga, Hidebe, Robinson. I think it could have been a flip of the coin, honestly. Who knows? And maybe we'll get some more word about, why. but it was cool to at least see like we were linked with the top player. It sounds like a good prospect.
Yeah. It was some incoming possible news, right? And it was like, oh, we were so close and we didn't even know
Right.
it. But yeah, honestly, for this kid, it probably is best that he stays in Europe, because I can only imagine, when he probably came to visit Cincinnati, not only is it going to be a new league for him, but like you said, he's going to be behind, and be a depth piece, right? Whereas you can stay in Europe, and even if you are a depth piece, you're still closer to home than, what you would be in the US. So we get that. But obviously a good young talent would have been great to have to build in the back line as a piece for the future. But once again, carry on to the next prospect.
He was I believe, a $3 million deal actually for this player too. So would have been interesting to again have. I'm hoping, based on what we're looking at, U22 center back, way to go. That depth, especially with some guys coming off of injury. The sooner the better. This guy has been playing, through the fall and into the winter now. Hey, Sam, what do you think about going back to Wolves and see if you have any center backs that we can use? I still think there's a potential there for a loan of a center back of another younger player, because we've seen us do that and be successful with that. I obviously would want a player that we can, actually, if it does come to a loan, we worked out well with yours and Mascara, so I wouldn't be mad about that either. Anything you want to add to that? Any other potential things that you've seen or?
No, I was just excited to see a potential signing,
No?
but like you
Okay.
said, hopefully more
Yeah.
incoming news is on its way.
Yeah, again, it's been kind of silent compared to some of the other MLS teams. Day to day, we're seeing so many interleague trades. Honestly, I feel like it's more this year than. So talking about ex FC Cincinnati players, Brandon Vasquez back to the Western Conference, going to Austin, or the Columbus Crew South, if you want to call them that. $1 million compensation is coming to FC for a 10% sell-on clause that we had for Vasquez to Monterrey from last year. This is not going to be able to apply to our GAM, based on what Tom Bogert's saying, is if FC Cincinnati already converted this maximum amount of fee to GAM last year. Big thing right now, we need to open this up. There's a big matchup coming up this year, though, for FC Cincinnati against Austin. Brandon's going to be back in TQL, and he scored against us last year with Monterrey. The question I had seen circulating online, Sam, if he scores again, is he going to celebrate?
I mean, I think he didn't celebrate the first time, but he celebrated the second time, if I'm correct.
Second
right?
time was at home.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, he might. I mean, the fans are still going to love him. Possibly. I know now he's with another MLS team, so it may hurt a little bit more. As he was in Mexico scoring against us, and we are like, oh, it's Champions Cup. So, it is what it is. But yeah, it's interesting move for Austin. A lot of money for a player that a lot of people saw as, declining in form. So shout out to Monterrey for getting more money than we did out of Brandon Vasquez even. So glad, like you said, we got some compensation from it. And we'll see him back on the pitch here in May.
Yeah, it was a $10 million move, and that was honestly going to be my question to you with, like, what do you think? $1 million for Brandon Vasquez, had been doing decent early on in Liga MX and their campaign, but later on kind of lost favor. They had a new manager at one point. He wasn't going to be in the plans of the team. And honestly, like, if you look at the options that I think Brandon might have had, if he would have had his choice, like, would San Diego have been a better fit? That's where he's from. It's a new team. He could have, established roots out there with this new set up with San Diego. But Austin's going to love him. I already saw, I don't know if you saw it, but all the fans welcoming him. I mean, that was pretty cool to see.
They've posted a lot
we
of
have
stuff.
Something. Yeah, Brandon's going to be a big player for them. I mean, that's a large move for Austin. I don't think they've had a big signing past Sebastian DeRussi, who might be on his way out actually, as well. So we'll see. Another ex-player, Sam, Joey Ekpanono. He ended up going to I'm gonna call him FC Cincinnati Charleston version. Another player that formerly played for us that's now going to play for Charleston Battery. We had I'm totally blanking on his name last year that scored. He had the record-setting goal amount for USL last year. Do you remember who it was? I'm putting you on the spot for it.
I know. I literally was looking over. We tweeted about it. We literally put it out, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Marcanic.
I
Nick
think
Marcanic.
Yeah, he's going to Spain.
So, and he's going to Spain. Yeah. So hopefully this works out for Joey going down and loaned out to Hartford, I believe, and then odd that we recalled him at one point for a current player that was called in. Miles now has 30 caps and 3 goals for the U.S., which I believe in this camp made him third in appearances behind Tim Ream and Walker Zimmerman. But second consecutive season he's been called up for the January camp. And of note, specifically with Pochettino, like he's kind of in favor with him. He's not really a steady starter, I would say, but I think Pochettino values him enough to say, I'm getting called in for the A squad, the B squad, the MLS squad. He wants Miles in there and as a leader probably too, for some of the younger guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the other 2 guys, right, that are going to be in the back line with him. Got a lot of caps for, an all MLS squad, which is really cool. And Miles being a part of Pochettino's first January camp should be, pretty good. We've got games coming up in January 18th, and then the 22nd, 18th is against Venezuela down in Fort Lauderdale, and then against Costa Rica on the 22nd is in Orlando. So those games should be pretty good. Like I said, Miles Robinson, Tim Ream, Walker Zimmerman probably will all start in the back line, depending on if they go with a 3-back. I don't know. Maybe who out of those 3 players, who do you think Poch would start?
I think he's going to go with Tim Ream, even though he's older than dirt right now. But he likes the stability of Tim Ream. He's your captain, even on the A squad. I think he's got to give Miles a look, like in that lineup next to Tim Ream. He wants to see how those 2 can play together, and this is kind of a good mechanism for that. It keeps honestly Miles sharp and in solid competition. Whatever you want to call this friendly period in this January camp. Obviously, we just don't want him to get hurt. That's the biggest thing going into this long season. You don't want that to happen, and you really want Miles to gel with the back line, but there hasn't been a ton of change there. So I think he's going to make a seamless transition to FC Cincinnati. We got some early games in February. So he'll be back, around that later January timeframe. I'm excited to see him play, honestly, and to see what he can do with Tim Ream and really showcase himself. I think this is his time to do it, especially with the people on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, an all MLS squad. So not only are you going to see, what the U.S. men's national team is made of, you're going to see what the MLS is made of and what Pochettino thinks about it at the end of the day. See what kind of mark, that squad leaves on him going forward for, the rest of the camps.
Do you see? So we had a big question, Sam. The last time we talked was, we were kind of surprised that Miles Robinson wasn't on the trading block, and Pat Noonan comes out and says we want Miles, and Chris said it too. We want Miles here long term, and I think Miles kind of sees his value, and after his season last year, and says like, look, man, maybe I'm in a better situation. I'm still consistently making the national team roster. I'm playing consistently here. If you go to Europe, that's not always a guarantee, like we've talked about. So I think it's a good spot for him. And if he can even elevate his game like we know that he can, then that's great for us too. So I just don't want, I hate to say this again, but like the mid-season, let's say June competitions for the U.S. To kind of interfere with our mojo for FC Cincinnati. That always happens with international competitions and whatnot. I think there is some coming up this summer. There's always international breaks, but we'll see.
Always at the wrong time too.
And that's something that we always have to balance. But again, watch Miles. 2 games for him. They are always at the wrong time, yeah. I'm right around when we play Columbus and Miami, like early, I think. So we'll see. That's for another time.
Everybody's talking about the diamonds, right? That's the big talk on Twitter right now. Apparently, I guess Kevin Denkey is also hiding the jersey underneath his, zip up today during the media days as well, right? So, love the talk on that. Honestly, just can't wait to see what the 10th year anniversary kit is going to be. Obviously, like we gave out what our opinion is on it. Even us putting out our own kit, we have, some changes I'm sure we'd like to make to that kit that we put out, right? So maybe we'll put out some more, maybe we won't, but it was more of just a concept to see, hey, what can people come up with? And then at the end of the day, maybe somebody's really close, right? Or they have it exactly right.
Wouldn't that be wild? Yeah, it sounds like that's the way they're going with him. That was, again, what had happened with MLS teams last year. Yeah, we'll see what happens with those kits. But again, like I said, sooner than later would be nice. We did have the MLS Media Day down in Miami, Sam. Pat Noonan and Kevin Denkey spoke about FC Cincinnati and the upcoming season. Pat Noonan was first to go. And one interesting point that I think he had talked upon was the winter-based schedule change that could be coming out that helps not only with transfer windows, but potentially helps the team as well. He talked a little bit about how this might change the way that we play and how we play better in certain environments and temperatures as well.
Yeah, he straight up was like, yeah, I'm for it. Like I'd rather have the European schedule. And I think, we had talked about it a couple of podcasts ago about whether or not the MLS would change it, how it would affect, the current schedule as well as, if we're going to be going with everyone else, how does that impact the transfer windows and everything like that? So I think once we work out those logistical things, obviously it makes it look a lot better.
Yeah. But again, this is probably more towards 2026 than anything, but it was interesting that they straight out, asked Pat about this. He's been pretty vocal about his opinion, even going back to, I think, August in the transfer window, Chris Albright, in addition to this. So kind of in a way, we're leading kind of this charge for change in the MLS and hopefully for the better. And we'll see what that looks like. Obviously, Sam, being in Cincinnati right now, we had so much snow this week. We could be having MLS games in, 10 to 12 inches of snow like we talked to. I believe it was Tom, wasn't it? That we talked to him about this, the snow game. Yeah, Tom Gallagher about it. So we'll see again if we do get a snow game this year. The other thing he touched on, Matt Miazga, Nick Hagelin, some updates for them. So Matt Miazga, he's hoping to be full go by mid preseason. And then Nick Hagelin, he said a little bit later they're going to take it slow with both those guys. Sam, what stands out to me is center back. Obviously the lack of depth. Miles Robinson potentially, again being out with the national team till the end of January, early February. You have Matt and Nick who aren't full go yet. Like, who do you go to at this point? Are they going to be up to speed for Champions Cup? Like, we got to get some moves in, it seems like, if we want to do well in the early competitions.
Yeah, obviously right now you're looking at, any of the FCC2 guys, right? In possibly Schaefer, who we drafted last year. He impressed, in that squad, came up, I believe he got called up to the main squad, I want to say for like Champions Cup or Leagues Cup or something. But I think he was in the lineup, or not the lineup, but on the roster. But yeah, as far as the other center back, we talked about earlier in the podcast, having a U22 spot. Gosh, like we got to get some depth in the back there. Having Lucho back, obviously that's, priority number one for Pat and, the coaching staff. That's, I think, if you have the guy signed, right, I think you would expect him to report to camp, and that's the coaching mindset, right? I don't think Pat's going to really get too caught up with, whether or not, the transfer is going to go through. Is Lucho gone? Like, he is dealing with the people that are on his roster right now that Chris Albright has given him, and he's going to, do what he thinks is best right now with the roster that he has, right? So whoever's on that roster, he expects them to be in camp.
Yeah, no, simple as that. And then had also mentioned that they're looking at left wing back, center back, and then some support for strikers. So where does that put Santos and Corey Back? Everyone I think in the fan base is thinking it too, but like we need some other options up front. I mean, that was our crutch last year. And get Kevin Dink come out in his first presser for FCC. It was exciting. I really believe in this potential, and I think he a good chance to win Golden Boot for MLS next year as the leading goal scorer. But he did talk about his excitement for this opportunity, how much the fans told him did come to play against TFC in the playoffs. It changed his opinion of the MLS too, which was kind of cool. He's a big NBA fan, Sam. So that was kind of funny, a little nod there to some other sports. I'm sure a lot of the athletes have to follow NBA, NFL. But then there is a chance in actually as we're recording tonight, in that there might be a supporters or two that might be at the airport that is going to see him in. So we get some video similar to what we did with Brandon Vasquez. Come and support this guy. League record signing. Like, it's unbelievable again that we have this in addition to the other guy. I again fully believe in Denkey, whether that's with Lucho, without him. I think he's just going to be a rock star for this team.
Yeah, I think overall, Denkey, I think during the presser, I think a lot of people were saying he's saying all the right things. Everything that a fan, other players, coaches, front office, he's saying all the right things. And he obviously wants to be a person that backs it up as well. So that's always nice to hear. And coming in when we first signed him, we're hearing all of the same things, right? I'm happy that there aren't multiple narratives, right? From this source, that source. Like maybe he's tough to deal with. Like nothing, none of that, right? Like he's a good teammate. He works hard. He's here to grind, and he's here to pretty much take over the MLS, right? So I'm super stoked and can't wait to see him in the orange and blue. Possibly being top goal scorer next year. That would be great. But Pat really said that having him up top is going to help the fluidity of the entire, formation.
I think it frees up Orshano. I mean, it's another player again that you have to look out for and mark. And he talked about his game being good with both feet. Being able to finish chances in the box, being able to hold up players. Like this is all what we were missing over the last, I would say, a year and a half. So I'm really excited again about this guy. It was cool to in the presser and wearing the jacket, Sam, like you had mentioned. Maybe he did have that uniform on underneath. That was a pretty cool looking jacket too that he was rocking. The dude's stylish. I mean, he's got pretty good style. Seeing some of his Instagram posts as well. But yeah, we're excited for him to be in camp and starting next week. I'm sure it'll be quite the change from the nice weather that he has been vacationing in. The team's going to be in at Mercy Health next week. Honestly, players report, I believe, on Saturday. And they're going to be in the snow, and then they're going to head down to Clearwater again, like we typically have over the past several seasons. We do have at least 2 games that we know of right now. That's going to be Montreal on January 24th, and then Atlanta on February 12th. I would imagine probably 2 or 3 more games. I'm waiting for the Philadelphia Union matchup because that happens every single year. But again, just excited to see this team, on the field in meaningful competition. Everyone wants to watch these preseason games because we're stir crazy. We're ready for soccer. It's funny every single year how we talk about we want these live streams to be able to watch the preseason games.
Yeah, well, you talk about, silly season, right? We're almost to trialist season, right? So getting into the preseason, I think that's, everybody's
True.
excited to see who's the masked player, right? And then Ryan, to your point, we always play the Union, and I don't know, maybe with the new coach, maybe we don't play the Union anymore, right? Because we don't really have the connection that we used to. So I know usually we play a college team as well while we're down there. In the past, it was, I think, did we play South Florida or we play like another
South Florida,
team?
yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's nice to mix it up, like you said, and I think we're just excited to get preseason going.